Good afternoon, Rhody Nation. Welcome back to another episode of Mark's Remarks here on WRIU 90.3 FM Kingston. I'm joined by a newcomer to the Rhody athletics scene, a member of the newest program on campus, the women's lacrosse program. I'm joined by freshmen out of the Bay Area of Northern California, Brinley Myers. Brinley, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
I'm very happy that you're here. First show I did last semester on WRIU, I had your head coach, Coach Jenna Slowey, on my show. That was fantastic. I was so excited to hear about the women's lacrosse program just because of the fact that it's so new. You don't really see programs at least start in the way that this has, where you have that kind of like year and a half buffer before you actually take part in serious competitive play. And I mean, just hearing all the stuff that she spoke about forming the program and the recruiting and just how to get a team like this together in order for it to be competitive at the start of play was very fascinating, and I wanted to and I was very eager to get a player on the show to hear a little bit about their experiences in this whole process, because I have to imagine that it's a new feeling. It's not a feeling that you would have expected going into college and going into play Division I athletics. But before we get into all of that, the nitty-gritty stuff this season, I want to first just learn a little bit more about you and how you got into lacrosse. So, just straight up, just what were some of the things that you did growing up that got you into lacrosse, like some people that got you into it, just what was that like?
Yeah, so lacrosse primarily is like more a East Coast sport. So it was just starting to grow in the West Coast when I was in first grade. That was the first ever team in my area. So my mom signed me and my sister up, and I've been playing since then. And alongside lacrosse, I played like soccer, basketball, but I've always just like loved lacrosse. And I played on a club team as well as my high school team. And then when I got more serious, I switched to a different club team to sort of more pursue it more.
And so as you were kind of growing up, you start to participate in more of these club teams and it starts to get a little bit more serious. I mean, just as you were growing up, what were those sort of decisions like where you were playing more, starting to realize that you were kind of good, that as you started to get higher up in those competitive ranks, at what point did you feel like, all right, this is something I want to stick with and play competitively?
Yeah, I'd say in middle school was really a transition point for me. I was playing for California Attack, which is now True Lacrosse, and I was sort of got a little frustrated at the practice because some people weren't on the same like dedication or level that I was on the team. So I was like, I need something more. And I got in contact with Teresa Sherry, who's the head of Tenacity Lacrosse, and I work with her now. But she's a great leader. She played lacrosse and soccer at Princeton, and she's kind of been like one of my mentors throughout this process, and she helped in my recruiting process. So after California Attack in middle school, I switched in 8th grade to Tenacity, which their club is a lot more focused on recruiting and getting players exposed. And because it's on the West Coast, they really are trying to help us get connected. So that was the first season I'd gone to the East Coast ever in my life, because that's where all the tournaments were, and I'd never traveled out there. And people always talk about how East Coast lacrosse is so much more aggressive and so much more challenging, so they'd embed that into our practices and go like 10 times harder. And coming to East Coast just helped prepare me and showed me like that side of lacrosse where I was like, this could really, like I could really go far with this. So, yeah.
And so then participating in the clubs and doing that as you were getting older, and then I have to imagine high school you were also playing as well?
Yeah, freshman year was COVID. So we had first semester, and that was fall sports and winter sports played regularly. So I also was on the varsity basketball team my freshman year. So I was on that team, and we won our North Coast selection, and then we were going to states, and this was during lacrosse tryouts for spring. So I couldn't try out yet. And the week I was trying out freshman year, school got canceled, COVID, 2 weeks off, and then school was over. So I did not have a freshman lacrosse season, which is kind of sad looking back, only having 3 years. But those 3 years were great years, and I wouldn't trade them for anything.
Do you feel like that at that point when COVID sort of like shut everything down, do you feel that there was like any sort of, like in terms of your goals with lacrosse, like did that like sort of stop anything, or were you able to just kind of continue with your development with somewhat ease on your own?
I'd say it instilled like a lot of motivation and determination within myself, because you're by yourself, you're sort of isolated. So I got to work on a lot of my fundamentals, and I sort of just being in a room by myself, like thought about like what I wanted, and I kind of worked harder during that time, those months, and just trained to get better.
Interesting. I mean, because you hear a lot about the different athletes' responses to COVID, because I mean, COVID obviously hit like people at different stages in their career and so on. And I feel like that maybe in a sense you almost got lucky because it happened so early and that you were able to still kind of develop yourself through that, and then you were able to get 3 consecutive like really strong years playing high school lacrosse. And so I mean, as you're going through like the high school process and playing with your team, did you feel that you were getting a lot of exposure through just your high school on its own? Because I know a lot of people will do club strictly just to get the additional exposure because their high school may not bring in scouts of that nature. But I mean, was that sort of the dynamic that you were working with?
Our high school was definitely like the best high school in the area for women's lacrosse. Like girls would sort of transfer schools just to play lacrosse at our school. And we competed highly with a team, St. Ignatius in San Francisco. They had very high-level players, and we ended up beating them my senior season. We lost them my junior season, beating them my senior season by a blowout, which was awesome because they have girls from the top schools like Harvard, Michigan, Johns Hopkins, and so that felt really good. And I'd say my senior season was just like a really important season for me. And like local coaches would come to our high school games, like the Cal Berkeley coach, UC Davis would come. But I'd say our high school coaches didn't do anything in recruiting or anything. It was just kind of you show up to practice, you play the games, then you're done. So club is definitely more for the recruiting, and you really have to be in a good club team to go somewhere. But high school, I wouldn't say it had awesome exposure, but if you really like took over there, you could get some good showings.
And so then how competitive was the club team that you were playing for simultaneously? I mean, clearly it seems that your high school team ran at least part of the state when you guys were participating. But I mean, just like was the club team at a relatively similar competitive level, or was it much higher?
I'd say it's at a relatively similar, just because a lot of the girls at my school are all also committed to very high schools. So my high school team was definitely very competitive. It's just our coaches were sort of not in the recruiting type. But for my club team, everyone kind of came from different areas. Like there was girls from Utah, from Colorado, from Arizona. It was kind of like a national team to bring like a lot of the best girls together to compete. But I'd say both were at a pretty high level of competitiveness.
And so playing with people from different parts of the country, did that give you any sort of exposure to like other parts of the country where you may have wanted to go play in college?
I'd say more or less, but I'd say a lot of those schools don't really have Division I lacrosse. Like in Utah, there's not really a Division I lacrosse team for women. California, there's a few, but I'd say I just met some great people through that, and I just have a lot of friends now that play at different schools, which was I wouldn't have known them unless I didn't play that club team.
And so clearly the East Coast is where you wanted to be if you wanted to go play at least competitively at the college level. So, I mean, I guess the elephant in the room is what led you to choosing URI? And I mean, for those listening that may not be fully familiar with the current situation that is with URI Women's Lacrosse, the program was announced a few years ago, but when it was announced, it was also announced that the team would not start playing competitively in the Atlantic 10 until 2025. So that was, I guess, in a sense, 2 seasons where the program was going to get built up from scratch and you were recruiting all of these women to come play, but there were not any actual games to be played. So Coach Slowey and her assistants kind of had their work cut out for them trying to convince transfers and freshmen to basically take a redshirt year and play with just amongst themselves, play scrimmages at other schools in Rhode Island. I mean, so I'm just curious, just your recruitment process seems to be very particular considering this is where you ended up. So just kind of walk me through what were some of those conversations like? Were there a number of other schools that you were looking at as well? And I mean, just at the end of the day, what kind of landed you or made you decide that you wanted to come here?
Yeah, I was looking at like quite a few other schools, and I was looking a lot at I waited a long time with my options because I like to see all of them and then sort of decide. And so I waited because high academic D3s can't offer till like July. So I waited until that point to get those in. And I don't know, Coach Slowey is just so good at like showing her purpose and like what she wants to build here. And I just really loved the area. Rhode Island was super cool to me, and I was not afraid of going across the country and experiencing new things. And I felt like college is sort of a good time to do that because I can always go back to California. All my family's there, so no problem. So I was like, might as well experience something new. And the idea of building a new program I thought was like inspiring and really motivational. Not a lot of people can say they're part of like an inaugural class coming in this first year. And I just really liked everything Jenna said. And she brought on Riley, who I had known from like other camps, and I love Riley. She's awesome. And all the other girls have been great. And I also knew a lot of people who had connections to Rhode Island, which was really random to me because someone from my school, they're like, oh, my dad went to URI. One of my friends had actually already visited URI because one of her friends went there. Like, it's crazy actually the connections that you have from literally across the country. Like a lot of people I've met have been connected here, which is so random and cool to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Were there any other schools like in the region that you were looking at? Because I know lacrosse is very popular up here, but I know a lot of the really competitive women's lacrosse can kind of start to tail off toward like the Mid-Atlantic, where a lot of the good programs are down there too. So I mean, were there just like a number of other like bigger schools that you were looking at here as well?
Yeah, I was looking at like a lot of the NESCACs. Like that was like my sort of area that I was going to go into. But once I heard about this, I was like, I do want to play at the highest level. Like playing D3 and going to high academic great school was obviously something that I wanted, but playing at the highest level, Division I, with coaches that I loved and an area that I loved, I just couldn't turn it down.
And so then, what were your initial reactions to her pitch when she was talking about where you'd have to take basically the redshirt year and you would be playing practices and scrimmages for an entire season? Because I know a lot of freshmen trying to go into it that have a lot of confidence and so on are wanting to be like, all right, you know what, let's get right into competitive action. I want to play. And I feel like that could be a turnoff for a number of athletes being told like, hey, look, we're not going to be playing competitively for another year. And so you're probably going to end up being here for 5 years. I mean, so what were your initial reactions to that?
Yeah, I feel like she sort of phrased it in a way where it's the bulletproofing season, so it didn't feel like a letdown or like a setback. It felt like something we can build on and we can just come out even stronger. And a lot of freshmen going into their freshman year don't usually start or play, and she kind of told us like we'd have like the opportunity to like be here for a year. We can prove ourselves. We can maybe potentially have a starting spot next year. And just like all these various reasons, and we get an extra year with the red shirt at the end for a 5th year, and just the detail that they'd have on us, the direct coaching with only 15 girls, we'd get a lot of help there. So I thought that was really cool.
And so then eventually you're like, all right, you know what, lock it in, let's commit. I want to be a part of this program. I want to be a part of the project and the culture that they're building. And so then you commit, you move in the fall. Just the initial sort of first couple weeks to a month where you're moving in the fall, it's obviously a spring sport, so it's not as, I can't imagine it's as intense during the fall as it is during the spring. But I mean, you're, in a sense, moving in as just like a regular student for the most part. Just what was that like for you? Because you're pretty far away from home.
Yeah, I always sort of thought about, since I'm a plane ride away, a long plane ride, but my brother, he goes to Gonzaga in Washington, so he's also like a plane ride away. But I thought, we're both a plane ride away. Like, it's just the time that's different, so I kind of don't feel like I'm that far, even though the time zone's different. But moving here was not a struggle. I feel like I'd known my roommate since we committed, like our junior years. Like, I feel like I was good friends with her, so that helped. And then sort of having a good like schedule every day helped. And we kind of got straight into it those first few weeks. And we've definitely improved a lot. Like, we did a certain run at the start of the year that now would be easy, but felt like death that first weeks. But we've all been working hard and seen a lot of improvement.
And so as you've like kind of lived and worked and grown with a number of these other women that have joined you in the freshman class and so on, I mean, what were some of their reactions and some of the stuff that they would talk about with joining in this project? Because I mean, to me, from what I've seen, it seems that everybody is fairly bought in to this idea and this vision that Coach Slowey and her staff have for this program, I mean, it seems that everyone's like, you know what, like, this could be really good, and 2025 could be a really, really big year for Rhode Island. I mean, you seem like that you're fairly bought into it. Your teammates, I imagine, are the same way.
Yeah, everyone's very driven, and we all came here for the same reasons. And that's one of the things we really focus on, like keeping our goals aligned and working individually to be better for the team. So everyone kind of holds themselves to a higher standard. And we do a lot of work mentally, and like we do like a book club. We're all very close, and we sort of work together in all aspects. We eat, literally our dinners every night last probably 3 hours because we can't stop talking to each other, even though we're together like 20 hours a week. So it's crazy. We all love each other, and we all are working for the same goals. And we're just trying to build a culture that can sustain a great and positive attitude to bring a good team, because you can go into some teams and their culture's already built and it's toxic. And here we didn't want to create that. And we all knew what we wanted to create, something inclusive. And we're all striving to do that every day.
Book club is pretty interesting. I mean, that was kind of going to lead me into my next thing, is just that, like, the games, I feel like, keep athletes fairly locked in and focused on the goal. And when you kind of take that competitive edge away, there's different things that you have to fill it with to keep you mentally sharp, or at least mentally sharp as like a collective together as a team. And so, I mean, stuff like a book club like that is fairly interesting. I mean, just like, whose idea was it to do something like that? And then stuff like the book club and others, like, are there things that you do that keep you sort of locked in, knowing that you don't have like the Atlantic 10 like regular season games like on the horizon next week or something like that?
I feel like our coaches always try to come up with stuff like that for us. Like, we did purpose mapping the other day with Brittany, and they just want to keep us like knowing why we're here, knowing what we're striving for, and staying good mentally and physically. And we're all just sort of on the same page, and we're just all pumped, and every day we're just working hard to get to where we can play games. And sometimes it's hard, like our motivation isn't there. And in our scrimmages, sometimes like after we score, like our celebrations aren't top notch because, well, it's a scrimmage. But we need to be like at that point where we're just so excited to step into that game. We know our first game we're going to go crazy, and it's going to be so hype, and we're just so excited.
Are there certain things that the coaching staff like repeats to you guys like during practice to kind of keep your focus head on? Because like you kind of just alluded to, where it's the energy is there to an extent when you have certain scrimmages, because at the back of your head you're obviously knowing that, okay, this game doesn't really matter in terms of like a record or anything. It matters for our own development, but maybe not in the whole grand scheme of like the record and competitiveness and so on. So like, what are some things during practice that the coaches and the staff kind of get you guys to do or say to you guys to keep you, to mentally check you and keep you locked in?
Well, I'd say like after our scrimmages, when we like perform sort of poorly, like they don't take it lightly like it's a scrimmage, but they do encourage us positively. They're like, we got burned on this, we need to work on this. Like, we treat it like a real game, and we improve what we need to improve. And every game we look at as an opportunity to do better and to improve on what we need to improve. And since in our practices right now we can't do sevens, and that's like a big part of the game because that's like how you actually play in a game. We do fives because of our numbers. And so that's why in a game it can be harder to play together, since we all don't exactly know how each other play, but we're learning. So each practice, the coaches sort of develop our practice plan to fit our needs and what we need to work on. And they're very good at keeping us in check, and we all know what we need to do better, and so we gotta work.
That's another like interesting aspect for this whole project, is the fact that the team isn't fully built yet, that there's still another recruitment window that has to be gone through, more transfers have to come in and so on. And so, I mean, playing with that really just a group of 15 of you and trying to work through and get all of your tactics right when you know that you don't have a full roster. I mean, just like, as you've obviously mentioned, like how you girls off the field are basically a family, like you guys are with each other all the time, constantly. But on the field, considering that you've never played with these girls before and that you didn't know them 6 months ago, let's say, just how has that change been for you in terms of just like going from that really competitive environment where you were playing at a very competitive high school and then playing at a big regional club to now coming here, playing with a lot of girls who are also coming from competitive environments, but having to learn about each other at the same time. Just what's that been like for you?
Yeah, I feel like we all had to really learn how each other play, since that plays a crucial role. Like on offense, if you can't really tell sometimes if someone's driving or if they want you to cut. So we've had to adapt and learn to each other's style of play, and that was difficult at the start. But I feel like now when you get to know each other off the field too, it helps. Like knowing your personnel off the field helps you play with each other on the field, and also knowing when you yell at someone on the field that since you like your family, like they don't take it personally. Like we have that bond where it's okay.
So the scrimmages that you guys participate in, I have to imagine that sometimes the level that you're coming up against may not necessarily be competitive. Are you playing against other universities from around the state? Are you playing against like varsity teams from other colleges? Are you playing against like club teams from other colleges? Like what's the level of competition you guys are going up against when you do these scrimmages?
Currently, we've played like a lot of the local teams like Bryant, and then we went to Connecticut and played sort of like some of the NESCACs like Amherst, Wesleyan. And that was really fun. It was good experience and exposure, and we sort of just saw our weaknesses and just tackled that. But upcoming, we have our last scrimmage, which will be in April, and we're playing 2 new programs as well who are doing the same thing as us, which is UNC Charlotte and USF. And it's cool also how they develop their teams, because like our team didn't bring as many transfers right off the bat, but like USF did. They transferred a lot of transfers in and have more numbers. But it's just like cool how different coaches go about the different ways of starting a program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it also is in reference to like the resources that are obviously behind the program and everything. And I feel like URI really has that. But Coach Slowey is, from our conversation in the fall, it seems that she's got a very particular type of player in mind when she's going for recruiting. And she really wants to get people who are all about Rhode Island and all about this school and all about wanting to be successful at this school and so on. And I feel like that's reflected in some of the transfers that she's been able to convince to come through and in the freshmen like yourself. And so it's just very fascinating to see and hear the different stories of people coming in to come play. And obviously, like we talked about before, just that pitch that she offers to athletes. I feel like, to me, like if I was getting pitched to say, hey, look, you're going to sit and you're just not redshirting and sitting on the bench while we all play, like we're just not playing in conference play at all, I would honestly be a little bit caught off guard, and I really wouldn't know what to think, because as a prospective college athlete, like you're going in with that excess confidence, being like, all right, like these people want me, they want to bring me in, but then to sit back and not really be able to play and then watch, like I would imagine a number of your colleagues and stuff and former teammates from the other from the clubs and the high school team that you played on have already made the jump and moved on and they're playing. It feels a little weird. I mean, is that something that you sometimes think about, that it does feel a little bit weird that you're not already, I guess, in a sense, playing competitively?
Yeah, it definitely feels weird, because I see my friends are getting like their freshman accolades or like their first goal, but everyone understands sort of what we're doing here, and like I know what I signed up for, and I just know mentally, like if you get like drowned in that, like that's not good. So I know like we're all pretty confident enough and motivated by what we signed up for, and are all super excited to build this program, and we don't look at it as a setback, but we're all just super excited. We just know that first game in conference will just be insanely crazy, because we have been waiting a year, but that just makes it even more exciting.
And so that like anticipation, obviously, I feel like builds the more and more of these scrimmages that you do, because the more you're playing with your teammates, the more you're traveling to these different universities, and you're kind of getting at least an inkling of what it would feel like to be playing competitively. That I imagine has to really help that sort of add a lot more fuel to that fire. Be like, all right, I'm ready. Like let's get going. I want to get after it.
Exactly. Yeah. When we first stepped on the field for our first scrimmage, we're like, whoa, like this is good. Like let's go, guys. Like we're so excited. And just knowing that it's just like around the corner, like the year's already gone by so fast. We're already second semester, and spring break's approaching. Like we're almost there. So everyone's really just putting their best foot forward and excited.
Interesting. And So, like, with the scrimmages when you're traveling to these different universities, I mean, are they, like, short, like, one-day trips, or are you going for, like how other programs travel for, like, a few days, and, like, you get the opportunity to kind of, like, explore around where you're going and stuff like that?
Yeah, we haven't done an overnight scrimmage. We've just done day trips, but we've done, like, tournament style. Like, some have been, like, 3 games a day or just 1 game. But we'll usually have the parents come and do, like, a tailgate, which is nice. But, yeah, we haven't had any overnight yet.
Have you had any of your family, like, fly out to see some of these scrimmages?
Yeah, my dad was actually just out for our one in Connecticut when we played the NESCACs. Yeah, and he actually flew out, and then there was a storm, so he got here, and they canceled it, but he flew all the way from California. But then they rescheduled it for the next day, and, like, my coaches, like, helped me, like, Brinley, we're doing this for you, like, we got your dad, don't worry. So they really made sure we got it on, and then we had it on that Sunday, and he got to watch, which was really special.
That's awesome. I mean, that I can only imagine, like, what your family must feel like being so far away and then, like, eagerly waiting to, like, hear, like, different updates from you about, like, oh, how's everything going? Like, how is the team looking and so on. And so I'm also curious, like, when you're doing these scrimmages and you're playing against these other varsity programs in the region, like ones that have already been established, are you having, like, any sort of conversations with your opponents, like, either before the game or, like, after or maybe even during, where it's, like, maybe you could, like, learn a little bit about, like, what the actual life of playing this sport at the Division I level is like?
I feel like I know a lot of girls that do play Division I lacrosse, so not necessarily from, like, my opponents that I have played. The only thing my opponents have said in some of our scrimmages are, so you guys are all freshmen? And that's like, yeah, we are, and we're scoring on you, so let's go. But, yeah, I feel like I know how this works, just knowing, like, a lot of my older sisters' friends play, like, SDSU and other schools, so I know them and know what they go through. And so I'm just ready to get into that.
And so that sort of comment, this made me think of this, oh, you guys are all freshmen sort of thing. Looking ahead for 2025, obviously the program right now is predominantly freshmen. And the new recruiting class will probably just add even more freshmen and a few transfers to come in to sort of round out the numbers. I mean, do you feel that the program will still be competitive from the start, even though it will probably be one of the youngest, if not the youngest program in the conference?
Yeah, I feel like we'll definitely be competitive, but it will be hard. Like, the next class, because we haven't had any other classes really with us besides a few other grades, but we'll have to, like, adjust pretty big to have, like, doubling our size next year. Like, that's a big adjustment. But we're obviously going to try to stay as competitive as we can with other teams and keep up and exceed. But that's all a waiting game. We'll see.
And so then in the long run, too, do you feel like that having that young core to then you have so many young people starting and then, like, 4 years down the line when they're seniors, like, they will have been able to have grown with the program? Do you feel like down the line that this could almost be a beneficial thing, having started the program with so many freshmen?
Yeah, because I feel like Jenna can develop, like, a really strong unit that really knows how to work together, because she's building us from the ground up. And once we get to, like, our senior year, we'll all be so close, and we've been playing maybe starting from freshman year to senior year. So we'll know the competition, and I feel like that'll just make us, like, exceptionally better from being on the bench or having a roster of 40 right off the bat. Like, it's a whole different experience.
And so then knowing the opposition, like, have you guys started to take a little bit of a look at some of the other universities in the Atlantic 10 and, like, how their teams sort of operate? Like, I imagine that you guys maybe do film sessions from time to time where you're just, like, to take a look at, like, what you could possibly be facing next year.
Yeah, like, the other day we watched a women's lacrosse game, and that was fun because we got to see, like, our coaches would stop the film and be like, what they do here, so we could see, or they talk about the rules, because a lot of the rules are different from high school to college. So if we were in our first game and we mess up a rule because we didn't know it was, like, a college rule, like, that would be frustrating. But, like, our coaches stop it and tell us, like, oh, like, this blah blah blah, this needs to happen here, this is how it happens in college. Like, if the shot clock, we never had a shot clock. If the shot clock, like, goes out, you want to hold the ball so you have possession or whatever. So there's a lot of, like, learning things. So watching collegiate games now is really helping us just understand the game more and sort of see what we'll be up against.
And I feel like that sort of like intensity where you have like the film sessions where you're trying to take it as seriously as possible, and then like even during the practices, I can only imagine that Coach Slowey and her staff try to replicate as much of like an in-season environment as they possibly can. How intense have the practices been? I mean, this spring, obviously, we're kind of just starting out now, but now, given the numbers, have they been as intense as you had expected, or are they maybe a little bit more than what you would have expected?
I'd say they're still pretty intense, but she still emphasizes like we want to have fun at practice, since she wants to keep us like loving the game even though we're not playing. So every practice is tough, and conditioning is tough, lift is tough, but we all sort of bond over the hard things. And like doing our conditioning at the end of the day, like we look at it as fun. Like they do, like when we finish our runs, we all high five each other before we can get water, because you did a hard thing, or you get your goalie first, because that's hard for them, especially because they don't really have to run during the game. So for them to do the same conditioning as us is awesome. So you'll go get them, give them hugs, and then you get water. Like our culture is huge for us, and we're just trying to build that.
And so then in terms of establishing a culture with the team, it seems that that's already on the right track. But in terms of a culture and a fandom on campus for Rhode Island women's lacrosse, when I had spoke to Coach Slowey about it, she was talking about how it's really just like you want to make people come to our games and watch. Like we have to give them a reason to come watch Rhode Island women's lacrosse. And you see a lot of fan engagement from numerous different programs on campus, where you see like students doing raffle tickets during basketball games from different teams and so on. So has the women's lacrosse team done any sort of fan engagement stuff on campus yet, or have you guys tried to, I guess, spread the word of the program a little bit more? Because I mean, as much as I know, and the rest of the sports media sector of the campus is very in the know with it, I feel like that there's still a lot more room for a fandom for this program to grow, particularly on campus.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of growth that is going to happen and needs to happen, but we do as much as we can right now. Like we did a 50-50 twice this week, actually, the raffle at the basketball game. And then for Giving Day, we got a lot of donations, and we try to do outreach on our social medias, whatever we can do in that way. And then also at our scrimmages, we've had like other athletes come, like a couple guys from the football team came to one of our scrimmages, and some of the volleyball girls, and they made posters. Like I feel like people are very excited because of the anticipation, and so a lot of students are wanting to come to our games, and even teachers will say, when do you guys start? Or when we did the 50-50, people were like, so when is the season? Like everyone's super encouraging and just as excited as we are.
And so how big of a boost is it to have your fellow student athletes like showing up to scrimmages like that to support you? Because I know that from the different teams and players from different teams that I've spoken to, particularly the freshmen, they've said that getting acclimated into the overall URI student athlete environment was really helpful for them for their adjustment and so on. And obviously like making friends with guys and girls from other teams was really helpful as well. I mean, just from your own personal experience and perspective, how big of a boost was it to be ingrained into this sort of athletic community?
It's been awesome. Like I feel like a lot of the teams are super nice, which is great, because coming in as a new team, especially all freshmen, like the freshmen themselves on other teams, they don't have as much of them, and they don't have as much pull on their team to like want to hang out with our team because we're all freshmen. But I feel like everyone's been pretty good, and we've made a lot of friends, and we're just super excited to continue to meet people and just to have people show up to our games. Our coaches were very impressed because it's just a scrimmage, and it was at Bryant, so I don't know, is that, 20 minutes away? I'm not sure exactly. But for them to come that way just to watch our scrimmage, like, meant a lot. And the girl who was closest with them, she had one of the best scrimmages of her life that game, just because a little bit of support, that's all you need. And so we're super excited for more support to come.
That's awesome. And so kind of as we round this out, I want to kind of give you the same questions that I gave to Coach Slowey in terms of, A, what you expect from this program next year, and then down the line and beyond, obviously, because you have so much more time to learn about this university and then learn about yourself as you grow as a student athlete. So I'm curious to hear about your expectations for over the next year to 2-3 years and beyond. And then furthermore, from a player perspective, why should people care about Rhode Island women's lacrosse?
Okay, so, well, Jenna emphasizes a lot of, we want to win. At the end of the day, we do. So I feel like in the next few years, we want to stay competitive and we all want to be gritty. That's one of our top values that we made as a team. So if we continue to work individually and as a team, we just want to stay on top of our game. And then as the years go on, hopefully continue winning or be in the talk in the conference. So that's all exciting. And what was the second part?
Well, just more or less like to fans, like a message to fans. What, as from the player point of view, what should fans, or why should fans rather, care about Rhode Island women's lacrosse? Like, why should fans come out and support this team and support you guys?
We hope that they care because of what we've created, because of the type of people we all are. Like, Jenna recruited a lot in character. So if, as individuals, we can draw in people who genuinely want to support us as individuals and as a team and what we're trying to build here and see our goals and what we want out of this, if they can really relate to that and want that for us, then I feel like we can build a pretty big support system. And I feel like it's already started and it just will continue to grow.
And so then the upcoming recruitment class could probably be anywhere from like 15 to 20 to 25 girls coming in starting in the fall. Do you have any sort of message for girls or for women that might be looking at this program or looking at URI or schools in the region to come out and play here? Like, do you have anything from your experiences, though it has been short, that would make players want to come play here?
Yeah, I'd say coming from California, like, I have no regrets. Like, URI has been awesome, and although it's only a short time, it feels like a family. Everyone's so close. Our coaches are so motivated, and they're also our really good friends. Like, they're great people. And so to surround yourself with such great people and such a great environment, and the teachers here are all awesome, and we've gone to the beach. The sunsets are beautiful. Like, you can't trade that up. So, yeah, there's really no complaints. I hope girls really want to come here because we're building an awesome thing.
Fantastic. Well, Brinley, this has been awesome. I am very excited to follow you guys and to come out to your games. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time, and I'm very eager to see how this team fully develops and grows, because I firmly believe that this program is going to be one of the most competitive teams that URI has to offer at the start of 2025, and I'm very much confident when I say that, because I mean, just having spoken to you, having spoken to Coach Slowey and those in and around the program, something very interesting is being built here, and it's something that you don't really see fairly often, and I'm very much looking forward to people coming to realizing that and going to the games for the first time and seeing, wow, that year-and-a-half wait was worth it. These girls are really, really good.
Exactly. We feel like we're building history here, and we're just super excited to be a part of it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was great. I loved hearing about your experiences. I'm very happy that you took the time to come and join me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, to those, everyone watching and not watching, listening at home, next week is spring break, so probably not going to have a show next week. So Wednesday the 20th, I think, is the first show after spring break. We'll be back. I believe we are going to have someone from the Rhode Island football team joining us on the show. So stay tuned. Check into all the social medias at Marks for Marks Pod on Instagram and Twitter for any updates. Follow Rhody Women's Lax on Instagram and Twitter, because they deserve all of the plaudits and support from you guys, both on campus, in and around campus, or just fans of Rhode Island from literally anywhere. It's a team to watch. So, yeah, give them all the support. Give them the same support you guys give me. But thank you all for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next show.